Hi there, everyone, tarot family and healing folk. So I drew this card today, and it actually kind of came upside down, but it was like the wrong way up, and I turned it around, and it was like, yes, it's more better that way. It didn't really matter. I was going to focus on upside down the right way up. I'm going to look at it a little bit more in depth, and I was journaling about it and what it meant to me in my life right now, and there was one thing that just came into my mind that I'd forgotten about, that I'd written before about this card, where these wands tended to remind me about taking plant cuttings and shoving them in the ground and watching them grow. You may never have done this before in your life, probably not. I was a herbalist for many years, and a lot of the plants that I propagated by taking cuttings, which is very simply just taking like a 6 inch um, section of the stem of a plant and burying it in the ground and watering it, leaving a couple of leaves on and watering it until it rooted itself and then grew into a new plant. So there's a whole process to this, and I was just looking at the process and thinking, wow, how perfect that is, not just for the message of this card on one level, but also the symbolism on many other levels. So let me run through it just so that I can share something that's been on my mind, and that I realized. And there's so I was likening this plant, or this yeah, like, so when you cultivate herbs and plants, there are many different ways to reproduce them, and obviously planting seeds is one of those ways. But if you have a plant that doesn't produce very good seeds, or the seeds really slow to mature, you can propagate them faster. So it's a quicker way to get what you want, and so then it symbolizes this quicker way to have a new plant growing inside of us, and I was relating this to new ideas, new beliefs, new ways of being, new aspects of our personality, some changes basically that we want to make inside of us. Something we want to cultivate more of, this instead of that weedy looking thing that we don't really want in our garden. Let's cultivate this beautiful flower, or this wonderful fruit, or this great tree, or something like this. And so, I mean, this is the same for life. If we have these old programs and these old ideas inside of us and we want to change them, then let's figure out what we want to change them to, first of all. So let's say, I don't want this, but I do want that. I do like that. And so when we've made that choice, we make a choice to go up to a plant and propagate it, or to take a new belief and plant that new belief. So the old beliefs that we've had are old programs. They're old stories that have probably grown from some seed that was planted in our consciousness in back in the day, through experience, through trauma, through maybe some type of negative interaction that we've had with the world, usually as children growing up. And this seed has then cultivated into a plant that may have been useful to some degree, but right now we don't want it in our lives, and it represents a belief that we'd like to take out and maybe replace with something else. And so I saw that this cutting metaphor is a fantastic metaphor. And so you go up to the plant and you find the healthiest part of it. So you look for that really young, healthy part of the plant, and you cut a section of it. You cut it just below the node. You cut it at a certain angle, so that because the node is the part of the plant where there are some cells which are much more likely to mutate and change from being the cell of a stalk into the cell of a root, and that's where the roots are going to start growing out. Then you take it, and you always leave a little bit of a few leaves on it. Not always with all cuttings, because some of the cuttings of stalks are actually green, and the green stalk will photosynthesize a little bit. But you do need some green on it. So when the stalks are brown, you kind of leave a little bit of a leaf on it, or a tiny bit of a few leaves just on the top, and they will call for the stalk to get some roots going, because that leaf is wanting more water than the actual stalk will want. Anyway, you then gently, you make a hole in the ground, and you put the stalk in the ground. Now 2/3 of it are underground and 1/3 of it is above ground, and those 2/3 that are buried and not seen is the part of this cutting that you want to mutate into and create roots. Yeah, but then you've really got to look after it. You have got to have this high humidity, little bit of light but not too much, definitely not a dry environment, but a very wet environment. And you've really got to look after it. So you've got to kind of go to it most days if you haven't got high humidity environment for it, and you've got to water it. And in certain circumstances, it's best to water it every day. It can't be too cold, can't be too wet, but you can take cuttings in the autumn, and you can take them in the spring as well. So it can be a little bit cold, but you have to have this high humidity story, and there has to be a lot of emotion. The humidity, the water element, is this emotion element around it. Now we're dealing with the fire element, so there has to be this transformation. So we're looking for this mutation of our stalk into cells. So we've taken something that's normally flying around in the air, this stalk, we've cut it and we've put it in the ground, and we want to root it. And that rooting is wonderfully symbolic in action. So no idea that we have that we want to then cultivate that idea. No new idea is going to be able to grow very well inside of our own garden, our inner garden, unless we ground it through action. And it's interesting that 2/3 of it is buried. So most of what we need to do, the work that we need to do, needs to be based in the earth, needs to be based in action. We can't just think a change and make that change happen. Those thoughts have to be converted into some type of change. And if it's a change that we want, it has to be a change of doing something differently. So we have to actively be willing, and this is where that fire of desire comes along, and the motivation, enthusiasm for change and shift comes along. And it actually have to stimulate us or make us enthusiastic to do something differently, to act differently, to choose to be a different way, and to move ourselves and work in a slightly different way. And we have to get a little bit creative about what that might look like. And then with that creativity, we have to have the consistency and the persistency and visit that plant every single day, at least for the first month or so. And then after a month or two, then you'll see new leaves will start to grow in that cutting, and that cuttings will start to get bigger and bigger, and then you can transplant it if you wish, and you can plant it in the garden, where you still got to look after it a little bit, but then when it gets big enough, you can let it go. And it's a perfect metaphor for the kind of consistent work we need to do in order to change our programs, in order to plant new ones and cultivate those new ideas. We need to really pay attention to it, and we really need to do things differently and visit that conscious desire to make a shift in our lives, so that it can then, after a certain amount of time, we can just let it go, and it will grow on its own. And then it can survive a bit of a drought, it can survive a heavy rain, it can survive the cold and the warmth, because it's a big plant already. And then we don't need to look after it. It's become part of our personality. It's become part of our new way of being, our new way of acting. And this is just, it reminded me of the fruit at the top, that we can see maybe in our lives. We have some of that fruit from the past cultivation, the past work that we've done about grounding new beliefs and transforming ourselves in one way or another. And while it might seem like a lot of effort at the beginning, after a while that effort needs to be, maintaining of the plant needs to be less and less and less and less, until we can just let it go and it's become part of who we are. Anyway, part of this share is about also the fact that this Sunday, on the 8th of January, I'm going to be sharing a webinar, which is like a 2-part webinar, which we're going to do in the morning, one 2-hour session in the morning, more or less, and one in the afternoon, where I'm going to share about a process of shifting different programs, or these old programs that we have, and changing these belief systems that we hold on to. And part of it's going to be theory, and the other one's going to be practice, and then the rest of it you've got to do on your own, as always. But I thought I'd share this process. It's a process that I naturally kind of fell into doing and then realized, oh, this has actually got some steps in it that are worth sharing, and I wanted to share this. It's a free webinar. I'm going to leave a link in the comments below, so you can just click on that if you want to sign up and join me on Sunday. I may well make this a video that you can check in afterwards if you're busy on Sunday, but sign up anyway, and then I'll send you the link to whatever comes from or whatever comes out of this. It might be too long of a share, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, join me there for the live, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting, and it's going to be a little bit of a Sunday workshop if you have the time and energy and desire. Much love to you all. Have a fantastic day, and hopefully see you at the end of the week.